Hello, everyone. A very good evening to all, and I am back once again, live and exclusive before you from my page Monjur's English Solutions. So I welcome you all to join my live session as early as possible. We are about to begin our discussion on English literary history, Old and Middle English period. Today we are going to deal with two very important periods of English literary history. Number one is the Old English period, and number two is the Middle English period. So join as early as you can. We are about to begin our live session shortly. And as I have already told you, I think those who follow my page and those who are connected to my page, they are already aware that I conduct a live session on each and every last Friday of every month, and today is the last Friday of March, and we are meeting again after the Eid vacation. Belated Eid Mubarak to all of you. I hope you have celebrated your Eid vacation along with your family, friends, and beloved ones. Today we are about to begin our discussion on Old English period and Middle English period. These two periods are very important for the students of English literature, and the significance of these two periods on English literature know no bounds. First of all, let us talk about Old English period, the first period of English literary history. So the history of English literature, or the history of English literary works, actually begins with this period, the Old English period. It began during the year 450 and ended in the year 1066. That means the duration of this Old English period is from 450 AD to 1066 AD. So now let us talk about the Old English period in details. Actually, England was ruled by many nations. First of all, it was the Celts, then came the Gaels, then came the Britons. Celts, Gaels, and Britons, they actually ruled over England for a long period of time. The language of the Celts were Celtic language of the Gaels were Gaelic language, and then came the Britons. Britons were the early inhabitants of Great Britain. So the name Britain actually has been derived from this nation, the Britons. So Britons used to rule over England, or they actually used to dominate in England for a long period of time. Later on, it was the Anglos who started to dominate the land. That means three tribes actually invaded England: Anglo-Saxon and Jutes. I repeat, Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, three German tribes. They came from Germany, early inhabitants of Germany. They were German tribes, three German tribes, Anglo-Saxon and Jutes. They invaded England. They attacked England and they invaded England. So among these three tribes, the Anglos started dominating, and the name England has been derived from Angla land, as the Anglos invaded the land and they named Britain Angla-land, and the name England has been derived from Angla-land. So I hope you understand. It was the Anglos who came to England during the year 450 AD. That means during the year 450. And we all know that during that time, I have already told you that Old English period, the span of this period is from 450 to 1066. That means the Ayame Jahili period, which was prevailing in Arabia, Saudi Arabia, or in the Arabia. So the people were very much savage during this period, and no nation was free. Might was right kind of a situation was existing in each and every country, because if a nation attacked a land, suddenly invaded the land, and that land becomes theirs. So no nation was secured. The powerful nations always used to dominate over the other. So this kind of situation was there. As I have already told you, England was invaded by many nations, and during the Old English period, it was the Anglos who invaded England and started dominating England. And the name of the king of the Anglos was King Alfred the Great. I repeat, King Alfred the Great was the king of the Anglos. So he became the ruler of that land, that means the Angla land or England. And he was a very good leader. He used to patronize education, art, literature. So this guy was a very good leader, and he did a lot of development for his nation and for England. His contribution to art, literature, construction of building and bridge knows bounds. He was a great leader, and he felt the importance of writing the history of the Anglos, because he actually suddenly got the realization that if the history of the Anglos are not written, if their history is not written, or if it is not recorded, the culture or the history of Anglos will be forgotten in course of time. So it was King Alfred who first felt the importance of recording the history of the Anglos. So he gave an order. He gave an order to his countrymen to write the history of the Anglos. And the Anglos actually started writing their history. The record, the book, there was no printing press in that particular time, so no written document is actually found. Only the inscriptions are to be mentioned. Some inscriptions were discovered later on. That means they used to inscript over stones and the skins or leather of animals. So those are the inscriptions were the only written document. And during this period, as printing press was not discovered, so we do not actually find the name of the writers. There is no record of the names of the writers of any literary work. So most of the writing or written document or literature that we find of this period are epics and poems mainly, like The Wanderer, The Seafarer, Beowulf. Beowulf is the name of a very famous epic. The Husband's Message, The Wife's Lament. These are some of the famous epics and poems that we find as the only literary document of this period. So most of the literary works of this period were epics, and the only prose document that we find is Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which was patronized by King Alfred himself. He gave the order to record the history of the Anglos, and he formed a team, and probably a team worked together to keep the record of their history. So the history of the Anglos that we come to know is evident in this book. I mean, in this inscription, not book actually, as there was no printing press during that time. Most of the written documents were inscriptions. I mean, the writings were inscripted mainly over stones or the leather or skin of animals. So Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is actually the document or record of the history of the Anglos, and this is how we come to know about the history of the Anglo-Saxons. So as I have already told you that Anglos invaded England and they started dominating England. Most of them were pagans. They were actually pagans. They used to worship dummies. They used to worship dummies. That means they used to worship dummy gods. And they were pagans mainly. But Christianity actually began during this period, during this Old English period. Saint Augustine was actually a very famous religious figure, like the Pope. He wanted to convert the whole Europe into Christianity. So Christianity began during the Old English period, but the Anglos were pagans who started dominating England. And as I have already told you, that most of the literary documents or the literary works that we find are epics, and no name of writer is recorded because there was no printing press during that time. Most of the writings were inscripted over stones and leather or skin of animals, and as a result we do not find name of the writer of those epics. Beowulf, among these epics, Beowulf is a very famous epic. The husband's message, the wife's lament, the wanderer, the seafarer, these are some of the famous epics or poems of this period, but we do not find any name of the writers. Most of the literary works were anonymous works. Beowulf also, and I think most of us have already seen the movie, the animated film Beowulf, which is based on this epic Beowulf that we actually find in the Old English period as a literary document. So Beowulf is a very famous literary work of this period, and the literary features of this period are, as I have already told you, that we haven't found any name of writers. Most of the writers are anonymous, and might was right kind of a situation was prevailing in England. No country or no nation was safe. The powerful nations used to dominate over the others, over the weaker ones, and no land was safe. Suddenly a strong nation, a powerful nation attacked or invaded a land and declared the land is theirs, and it becomes theirs. So there was no security. Might is right kind of a situation was there in England. So heroic deeds, brutality, savagery, these were the literary features of this period. And sea adventure was there. Even in Beowulf we see the sea adventure. Sea adventure is there because during that period there was no modern vehicle or transportation system. People used to travel from one country to another country by ship. So sea adventure was evident in the literature or literary works of this period. So as I have already mentioned, some of the literary features of this period: brutality, savagery, sea adventure. These were actually the main literary features of this period, and most of the literary works were epics, heroic deeds. A hero, a superhuman a human who is actually a hero, that is actually found in the epics. a hero with superhuman qualities that we see in Troy, in Iliad, Homer's Iliad. That kind of heroic figure is there. Like Beowulf. Beowulf also is the name of a hero, and his heroic deeds is narrated in this poem, in this epic Beowulf. So heroic deeds actually are evident in the literature of this period. So Old English period I have already discussed. I hope you have understood. Now let us move on with the next period of English literary history, that is the Middle English period. Middle English period follows the Old English period. That means it comes immediately after the Old English. So after Old English comes the Middle English period, and it began during the year 1066, where the Old English period ends. The Old English period began in the year 450 and ended in the year 1066, and the Middle English period begins where Old English period ends. That means the Middle English period began during the year 1066 and it ended in the year 1500 or 1500 AD. I hope you understand. That means the duration of Middle English period is from 1066 AD to 1500 AD. This is the duration of the Middle English period. So what happens during this period? Well, Middle English period is actually divided into two parts. Number one is the Anglo-Norman period. I repeat, number one is the Anglo-Norman period, and number two is the age of Chaucer. Middle English period is divided into two parts. Number one is the Anglo-Norman period. The duration of the Anglo-Norman period is from 1066 to 1350 AD. And the second part of this period is the age of Chaucer, which began during the year 1350 AD and ended in the year 1400 AD. So I repeat, Middle English period is divided into two parts. Number one is the Anglo-Norman period, and number two is the age of Chaucer. So let us first talk about the first part of the Middle English period, that is the Anglo-Norman period. Well, as I have already told you, that Anglos actually dominated during the Old English period, and the language of the Anglos were Teutonic language, which I forgot to tell you. Anglos used to speak Teutonic language, which was actually a German dialect, and this Teutonic language is considered to be the father of English language. That means the Old English, which actually has been derived from the Teutonic language spoken by the Anglos. So Anglos were actually there in England, but then came the Normans, and the Normans, as I have told you, during the Old English period, there was no security. The powerful nation always used to dominate over the weaker nations. So suddenly, another nation invaded England. That was the Normans. The Normans came from France. They used to speak French dialect, and the name of their leader was William the Conqueror. So William the Conqueror, who was the leader of the Normans, invaded England during the Anglo-Norman period, which is the first part of the Middle English period. So it was the Normans who, under the leadership of William the Conqueror, invaded England or conquered England, and thereby they started their regime in England. So the Normans used to speak French dialect, and their ruler or their leader was William the Conqueror. And then after that came the second part of this period, of the Middle English period, that is the age of Chaucer, from 1340 to 1500 or 1500 AD. 1350 AD to 1500 AD is the duration of the age of Chaucer, which is the second part or final part of the Middle English period. Why is this period called the age of Chaucer? Because a famous literary figure, famous poet who actually started his career during this period, who is considered to be the father of English poetry, and his name was Geoffrey Chaucer. Geoffrey Chaucer started writing poetry for the first time in English during this age of Chaucer, the final part of the Middle English period. So Geoffrey Chaucer is considered to be the father of English poetry, and he actually published a poetry. The name of the poetry is Canterbury Tales. It is actually a collection of many poems. So Geoffrey Chaucer is considered to be the father of English poetry. He began his career or started his career during the last part of the Middle English period, which is known as the age of Chaucer. So during this period, printing press was established for the first time. William Caxton, he actually established printing press during the year 1476, that means 1476. In the year 1476, printing press was established by William Caxton for the first time. So for the first time we see the published written literary works during this Middle English period, and we find the father of English poetry who started his career during the last part of the Middle English period. His name was Geoffrey Chaucer, and the name of his literary work, famous literary work, was Canterbury Tales, which is actually a collection of many poems. English Parliament was established during the Middle English period, that was during the year 1295, and the famous Magna Carta was established or formed, which limited the power of the kings. That means the kings also came under some laws. That means laws are for everybody, not only for the countrymen, but also the king has to be under some laws. I mean, the king or the ruler of the country will also have to obey the law. So Magna Carta actually limited the power of the kings or the monarchs. Now what happened during this period? I mean, towards the end of this period, the Reformation of English Church also began during the Middle English period, and towards the end of this period, a major incident took place, and in the birth of Renaissance. The birth of Renaissance actually took place during this period, during the final part, or during the last part of the Middle English period, or towards the end of the Middle English period, we have actually seen the birth of the Renaissance. What is Renaissance? Renaissance is the most important literary history. I mean, it is very famous and a very prominent period in the history of English literature. The Renaissance. Renaissance actually is a French word meaning rebirth of ancient Greek and Roman literature, which actually indicates towards the rebirth of ancient Greek and Roman culture and civilization, which is known as the Renaissance. So now let me explain what happened during the Renaissance period. Renaissance actually took place during the end of the Middle English period, I mean towards the end of the Middle English period. Where Middle English period ends, Renaissance begins there. So now let us talk about Renaissance, I mean the last major incident of the Middle English period. Middle English period actually ended with the birth of Renaissance. So my discussion will actually end with the beginning of the Renaissance period. So actually the Sultan of the Ottoman Turks, I repeat, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, his name was Muhammad II. Muhammad II was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, that means the Turkish Empire during that time, Ottoman Turks. So Muhammad II was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire during that time, I mean towards the end of the Middle English period. So his father, I mean Muhammad II's father, he actually read a hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the hadith was, surely the Muslims will invade or conquer the Roman Empire, and their army would be so powerful, so glorious, so victorious. This was the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But when it will happen, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually didn't clarify it, but it will definitely happen. It was actually mentioned in a Sahih or documented hadith. So Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih's father, that means Muhammad II's father, he actually used to dream of conquering Roman Empire, but he could not do it during his lifetime. So when his son was born, after the birth of his son, he named him Muhammad, I mean after the name of our prophet, the last prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let me take a break. Okay, as I was saying, so Muhammad II was then named after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His father dreamed that one day the Muslims will conquer the Roman Empire, and he actually wanted to fulfill his dream through his son, because he himself could not defeat the Romans. So when Muhammad II, I mean Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, grew up, he started his mission to fulfill his father's dream. He wanted to invade the Roman Empire. During that time, the Byzantine capital was Constantinople, which was actually the capital of Rome and the center of business, commerce, trade, art and literature of the entire Europe. So it actually was considered to be the capital of Europe, the Constantinople, the Byzantine capital, the Byzantine capital, Constantinople, which was considered to be the capital of Europe, the center of trade and commerce of Europe, which actually was the Roman Empire itself. So he wanted to fulfill his father's dream by conquering the Byzantine capital, Constantinople, and he started his mission, and he successfully defeated the Christians and invaded Constantinople during the year 1453, that means 1453. In the year 1453, he conquered Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, or Muhammad II, invaded Constantinople during the year 1453. So it became a success for the Muslims, and the battle was named the Battle of Crusade. So during the Battle of Crusade, the Muslims defeated the Christians and thereby started their regime by defeating the Christians in Constantinople, which was actually considered to be the capital of Europe. the Byzantine capital, Constantinople. That means the Roman Empire. So thereby he fulfilled his father's dream. And not only that, Sultan Muhammad Al-Fateh was a very powerful leader, a very successful Muslim leader who conquered almost half of Europe. And during that time, most of the Christian scholars, especially the Roman and Greeks, they actually took shelter in different parts of Europe. They actually fled away from Constantinople, from the Roman Empire, and took shelter in different parts of Europe. There they started spreading their knowledge, that means their art, culture, literature. They started spreading them in different parts of Europe as they lost their own land, as they lost their own country, Constantinople. So from there they moved to different parts of Europe, and thereby they spread their knowledge, especially the Greek and the Romans. And this is known as the rebirth of the Greek and Roman culture and civilization in Europe. The whole Europe was influenced by the Greeks and the Romans and their art, culture and literature. And this is known as the period of Renaissance. I hope you understand. So Renaissance period is considered to be is the most important and significant period in the history of English literature, which we will discuss later on in my next live session. Today's live session ends here. I hope you liked it, and the students of English literature will find this discussion very much informative. I hope they will enjoy a lot. But before I finish, I will talk about the literary features and some literary works of the Middle English period. As I have told you that Geoffrey Chaucer actually used to write. He started his career, and he actually was considered to be the father of English poetry, Geoffrey Chaucer. So Canterbury Tales was his famous literary work, which actually was a collection of poems. And another famous literary work of this period, of the Middle English period, is the translation of the Bible. Bible was first translated into English from Latin by John Wycliffe, which is the first written documents of prose writing, which is the first document of prose writing. So John Wycliffe actually is considered to be the father of English prose, who translated Bible from Latin to English. But Bible was first written in Hebrew language. Later on it was translated into Latin, and for the first time it was translated into English by John Wycliffe. And this is known as the first written document, first prose written document. So John Wycliffe actually is considered to be the father of English prose, who translated Bible from Latin to English. So these are the two most significant literary works. Number one is written by the father of English poetry, Geoffrey Chaucer. Canterbury Tales, his literary work, collection of poems. And the other one is the first prose writing, first English prose document, that is the translation of Bible, that was translated by John Wycliffe. Now the literary features of the Middle English period. Love, chivalry and religion were the literary features, and during this period actually drama began in the form of morality play and mystery play. That means drama writing began during the Middle English period as a form of morality play and mystery play. And most of the writings, especially the poetry writing, was influenced by Dante, Petrarch and Boccaccio. Dante and Petrarch actually are, we all know that they are actually Latin or actually Italian poets. Dante is a very famous Italian poet, and Petrarch is also a very famous Italian poet. He actually was the pioneer of sonnet writing. We all know that Petrarch is the pioneer or father of sonnet. So their writings actually influenced English literature, mostly during the Middle English period. So I hope you understand. That's all for tonight. We have discussed Old English period and Middle English period, and the beginning or birth of Renaissance, which happened towards the end of the Middle English period. So in our next discussion, we'll talk about Renaissance period, which is the most significant, which is considered to be the most significant period in the history of English literature. Till then, it's goodbye from here, good night, and take care. Assalamu alaikum.